شوي خمار شوي area crossroads.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the latest episode of Walk the Crossroads. As the Amazon say, Artenye Shenla, Artemis to you, and tonight we're going to be talking about the first estate of the Avalon Society, the Nobility. The Nobility arose from a series of mega corporations in early eras, and through a selective conspiracy known as the Ascendant Sovereignty, they struck a deal with the House of Aken, and which was founded by Balaken during the time of the First Systems War, and eventually they created what is known as the Blood Declaration, which made the very basis of the noble houses. Now, tonight what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking a bit about how houses are organized, how they work, and how the very language of the nobility itself has established its own system of uniqueness among the various favored societies and general reaching groups that we find in the Triad and beyond. The nobility name themselves the Blood, reflecting their status as the cut above the rest. Noble life is filled with complex protocol, language, and is a subculture unto itself. Let's define the first estate. There's some very interesting rights they are given that was basically set down in the Blood Declaration, which is the foundation of the nobility, and it was originally by the founding investors of the Aken dynasty. Here are the three core attributes. The nobility carried the blood of one of the three imperial dynasties, the Aken, the Olgan, or the Artur. This is outlined in the document known as the List of Names. The Blood Mark Amendment, which stipulates all nobility must bear a blood mark to prevent the existence of pretenders to the First Estate. The third core attribute is the establishment of the magnates and the peers of the realm and their respective titles, fiefs, and addresses. Nobility are given the following rights. They can organize their own personal army, known as the House Guard, which can be called upon to serve their liege lords. So if you have a series of troops and you are just a district lord, your troops can be called upon, be ordered, and used in battle by the lord above you, and even all the way up to the sovereign prince. The right to appoint, organize, and establish your own government according to the rules of local systems and imperial law. This means that within your own little fief, you have a bit of leeway for what you can enact, but you cannot go against the laws set down by your superior lords. And the right to seize local genics in the defense of the realm and train them as errants. Genics, because they are a rare mutation, may be seized by any noble house in the area as a means of defending the public good. Now, ennoblement is a very kind of complement concept. This is how you become a noble. To become a noble requires favor and exchange of debt. The easiest way to earn nobility is through action and commitment. You can gain it basically by earning tracts of land and offering the swear of fealty. You also can gain a title or have one that's newly created. Only a great house can appoint a new title within the realms, and only a sovereign lord with a vote of the houses of the senates can raise a new great house. Even lesser houses need to have the blood of the blood imperial, and this is what generally will happen. You have to earn it, and you have to be voted in favor by the entire Senon. You cannot just be appointed. There's actually a rank of lesser types of aristocrats that exist. They don't necessarily have noble blood. We'll talk about them in a moment. Some routes you can take is if you're a genic from the lower estates and who are ruling the wishes to establish a long line of errant blood. So basically, if you're a genic and your lord wants to establish a genic bloodline within their noble house, they might ennoble you and give you like a district or even just a small estate. Or if you're a skilled guildsman who your local nobles see as an asset, they'll probably offer you a marriage or even give you a title. And again, even if there'll be like a minor title, and we'll talk a bit about how that works. Okay, so let's talk a bit about titles, fiefs, and address. The Blood sees themselves as not only above the commoners, but nearly as a species apart. Their long-standing traditions have survived centuries of weathering, and their bloodlines have yet to falter. Three key aspects note a noble's rank in life and their holding of titles, fiefs, and their addresses apply therein. Titles are awarded based upon acts or fiefs that a noble holds as a client-in-chief of the realm, bequeathed upon a house by the Seinon and the sovereign lords. It is the fief that rewards the family with its heraldry and its inherited titles. So, individual houses do not have standards that they bear as a house. They have their blood mark and their house sigil, which is the blood mark itself. If you have a standard that is a griffin upon a blue field or two towers, like you might see in Game of Thrones, you only gain this by holding a specific land which the heraldry is attached to. Alright, there are 3 types of general titles. Imperial titles, which are titles awarded by the imperial government of the Seinon or the House Senate. National titles gifted to those within different polities of an imperial fief. And honor titles awarded for acts of valor or for other acts often come with responsibilities or occupations linked within the imperial government, or what is known as in general as the imperial bureaucracy. Now, the power a noble has and their status in society is determined by the fief held by their family. A house lord cannot be an earl unless the fief they hold is a shire, nor can his children claim any resources from the holdings tied to the fief itself. In a household, only the house lord and their consort may hold the title associated with a given fief. So, if your mother is the house lady, only she may be addressed as comtesse, and only her consort may be called comtesse or comte. The children are given a generic reference, and so are other lesser relatives. Now, the highest level is the sovereign desmond, the fief of the entire system under the rule of a sovereign house. These are the domains of the sovereign princes. A high mens, which is the feudal right to rule more than a single planet or sector of space, includes marks and duchies. Basically, a duchy would be a planet and like a moon, or 2 planets, and then a mark is 2 large sectors of space. A mens, which is a normal rule of a planet or a sector. Like Ellis, there is a shire which is ruled by the earls of Ellis, and then there are the comps, which is a person who rules a sector. And then there's vassalage, which is the right to rule a minor territory that is part of a mens, such as a shire, which is actually not an early. It's the lore here is a little bit wrong. It's also known as a viscounty or a barony. Now, the next level after that is what is known as the district vassalage, which are basically prefectures, provinces, and subregions within a nation. So basically, you're you're what are known as district houses. You're the lowest you can get, often called baronetcies. A title, term, and standing depends upon the responsibilities apply it. A marquess rules a mark or a march in a vast area of space set aside between the marches of the triad and the central populated centers. They are often charged with the defense of the realm versus an earl who oversees a major world and is charged with maintaining imperial law among the various nations within their fief. Now, we're going to talk a little bit here. There are different types of houses that exist because there are different little groups that exist. The highest that we can have are what are known as the sovereigns of the realm. These are all the standing sovereign princes. When they are referred to in Elder Tongue, they are always called simply prince or princess, or in Elder Tongue they are known as Taiwasain, or they can be called Sain. We'll get into honorifics in a bit. It's a bit complicated, but we're kind of just doing an overview of noble life here. Now, below them are the people we call the magnates of the realm. The magnates are the most powerful houses. They are the great houses under the sovereign princes. They are the most powerful houses outside of the prince within the system. These are basically everyone who controls what are known as the system's tribunate, the lower house of the Seinon. Now, the various titles include duchies, marks, shires, and counties. So we have our 2 highest rulers, which are going to be the duke or duchess or duchess, and that is they are known as a duikas in Elder Tongue. Those who rule a duchy territory consisting of more than 1 planetoid. The marquis, or the marquess is all known as Ardaloth in Elder Tongue are those who rule a mark, a territory consisting of more than one sector. Below them are the Comtes or Comtesse, or the Aral, who rule a county, a territory consisting of one sector. And then you have the Earl and Earless, who rule a shire, a territory consisting of one planetoid. Members of great houses are always called Great Lord or Lady when they are not the House Lord or House Lady. Now, there are a lot of minor housing levels. There's quite a few titles, and we're going to kind of do a kind of a mixture here. Some of these areas include subregions, which are baronetcies and a few other groups, and others are specially chartered city or country lords who are elected because they are free. They're kind of like trade centers, so they were given a special dispensation by the house, by the other houses. So the first we have is the Vicomte or Vicomtesse, which is known as Bistaral. In Elder Tongue, they rule what are known as Viscounties, which are basically a cluster of colonies within a sector. They're kind of like, starborn nations, basically. A baron are those who rule a nation upon a planet. Then you have the prefect or prefetesse rectir, who rule an elected prefecture or a trade chartered territory. I'm just going to mention that the word for baron in Elder Tongue is domain. Then you have the baronet or baronetess, those who rule provincial districts. This is basically the standard group who controls a province in a colony or on the world itself. Alright? Next we have someone who's known as the Reeve or Reeves, known as Nemiras in Elder Tongue. Reeves are people who control an area known as a seed or a seat, or imperially recognized ceded lands. Ceded lands are areas which are set aside for large wild-born populations. They're not very common. There's a few houses that have arisen here, and basically they're kind of like little reservations where the Feyre have gone, you're a mutant, you can have your land, just let's not, yeah. They kind of keep it away from them. The next rank are the Greve, the Grieve or the Grievess, which are known as the Kiathor in Elder Tongue. They are those who oversee a Harda or fortified series of space stations set aside for trade. A Grieve is basically a shipborne family that has gotten enough power where they have a network of fortified space stations which are set aside specifically for trade. They're a bit like the trade towns you see in ancient parts of Europe or other areas. And below them, you have a Burgrieve or a Burgess, and they are the lesser lords who may oversee a specific subsection of a Harda known as a Burg. Minor houses are always, when they're not the house lord itself, they're always simply called lord or lady. Now, below the peers of the realm are what we call the sirey, the sireship, the sires of the realm. And it's basically those lacking direct noble bloodlines or even bastards. They are often set aside for non-inherited nobility. Their titles are gifted, so they cannot be passed on. These are often basically the typical honorifics applied a lot in many cases to errants who are not nobles. So we have the first one, which is Esquire, a high-ranking errant of the house. They're always called Esquire. When applied in Elder Tongue, they're called the Ishval. Then there's also Sire or Dame, a basic title awarded to ranking errants within a household, or soldiers who have risen to high esteem within the house guard. So this is kind of what you may call a high ranking of your military or even a good advisor. And they're called Sire or Dame, and their Elder Tongue title is Anyar. So let's talk a little bit about honorifics. The nobles actually have a very complicated concept of honorifics. They will use it in many cases to insult each other, which is interesting in the fact that they can have entire passive-aggressive conversations where there are basically jousting with those who they don't like, and it is only the nobles who even remotely understand this. So let's talk a little bit about this. Everybody who are often are the highest level, the only ones who get to be called Majesty are the three sovereign lords, the three princes of the realm, because they're the ones who are holding the rule of the ancestor throne. They are always also known as Taiwasen, kind of like the Japanese honorific, you can add Tywasane to the end of someone's name. If you are, it's better than saying Tywasane, like, let's say you have Princess Sadeera, you would not call her Tywasane Sadeera, you would call her Sadeera Tywasane, because the title goes after the name. And if you're being very personal, you can even call her, Sadeera Sane. If you say that, that means you're probably a member of her direct, retainership. So, not a good idea if you're a random commoner to walk up to the princess and be like, Sadeera Sane! And they'd probably look at you and be like, begone, commoner, and they'd probably have you hit by someone. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about how general honorifics in address work. The blood take the respect given in address quite seriously, and failing to remember how to do so is often a mark of foolishness. Among the nobility, the usage of address is often a form of sarcastic banter, a means of testing the waters, and also a subtlety means of displaying loyalty. Official addresses are conducted based upon rank and relationship. Entitled nobles, house lords, and ladies are simply referred to as my lord or lady, then the title, my lord comte, my lord marquis, my lady graves. This is how you refer to someone. Their family are referred to as either lord or lady for minor nobility, and great lord or lady for great houses, and sovereign lord or lady for sovereign houses. Remember this, people, if you're talking to even a distant branch of a sovereign house, you still have to call them sovereign lord or lady because they outrank you. And pissing them off can get them to get their relatives to come after you if they really have that kind of pull. Otherwise, you're just a Sackville Baggins trying to steal the silver from your richer relations. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about negative honorifics. The fact this exists is kind of interesting. Your honor. Referring to anyone as your honor is kind of insulting because all nobles have honor. It is implied. You are not to question it. Honorable lord is the same thing. Your graceful is a minor form of insult because, again, they're nobles. They're assumed to have honor and grace. Even if they're slothful bastards, it is a given because they are above the masses and the rambling rebel. Respective honorifics include your excellency for those a rank above you. So if you're a minor lord referring to a greater lord, you can say your excellency Lord Comte. You would say that. Your grace, if you're talking directly to a sovereign lord or house family members. My liege, only to your direct lord. You would not say this to the person below you. My lord, my lady. When you contract my lord and lady, you're implying a personal level of loyalty. So you go, my lord, comte. That would be only to your direct liege, and you're saying, or you're trying to imply a level of loyalty by doing so. Now, life of the blood itself is controlled and directed by the pieces of the sovereign game. The drive to one day sit the ancestor throne and reunite the empire has been dreamed of many a young lordling. In the entirety of the sovereign game directs the lives of not only the ruling nobility, but also the members of their houses. A steady series of currents that drive the loyalty to one's blood into name and heraldry carried by the houses. Because a house often comes from a diverse background, they often have specific strengths and weaknesses that make them stand out from the rest. Let's talk a little bit about house traits. These are basically traits that have been bred and defined into houses over time. A soldier house often exudes a sense of loyalty, duty, honor, or even brutality. An errant house would be a little bit different, and this creates a sense of who you are. Traits can also lead to a sense of political obsession, especially among more conservative family or purists who despise the intermarriage between those outside their ethnic group, subrace, or even their extended family. Yes, with neo-alchemy, you don't need to go outside the family to get love. You can just print yourself one that actually has a non-incestuous genetic version of your family, which is interesting that the Faerie even do this, and let's talk about this. So there are two basic types of traits. You have humor, which is a trait which is personality traits or quirks of the family mentality. This might even be madness or even a tendency towards foolhardy decisions. Blood traits are physical quirks, oddities, or even genetic modifications that the family has done. So one family might actually have iridescent eyes, elf-like ears, weird streaks to the hair, and this is just how they set themselves apart. They look at the blood mark and they're like, that doesn't mean anything. We must be even more interesting. So it's a bit like the capital from, Panem. if anyone has read the Hunger Games series or seen the movies, you know that the capital is very interesting, eccentric. This is how the nobility act. Then we have what are known as purity of traits. The way how the traits are interpreted across the triad has led to a movement of multi-ethnic proportions among the Pharaoh. This is the purity movement, a greater aspect of the traditionalist strain of thought found among the nobility. Even the most liberal-minded nobles consider themselves above the lower states, but purists take the idea to a new level. Extremists often practice pure bloodlines, a form of carefully bred incest to produce certain traits. Among magister families, these are families with heavy interest in errant bloodlines, this is far more likely because they're trying to produce an errant in their family. Like the breeders of fine steeds or prized pets, they select their children or sub-branches to produce offspring with a desired trait. Let's talk a little bit about house holdings. All houses control nations or nations and have subservient families that answer to them. All of these add up to what a house controls and how they make money and how they deal with external or internal threats. So a house often not only controls nations, they will often control a company or a series of trade networks or something like that. So basically think of like the companies in Dune. They own a planet, they'll also own a corporation, they'll also own other little things that rake them in money. So when you come to the power of a house, there will be lore eventually that will talk about what kind of basic holdings your family has. Now, houses with powerful naval defense forces, or NDF, are often more apt to fight wars in dealing with space flight, and territory in the Sea of Stars. Families with access to stronger AMF, atmospheric defense forces, are better defended in atmosphere and are more likely to be world-bound. Houses also need relationships with others than themselves. This can be a contract with another house, or a place many members within the guilds that gain a level of expertise. These are known to houses as holdings, a term that once referenced only to the feast, but is also a means of understanding skill sets and other things that a house has. So, let's quickly define what a holding is. Skill sets of the family members in general. If you have a bunch of rights, meisters, or errants, you will often use that as a means of understanding what kind of family you are. The physical businesses owned by the family, the defenses or military forces controlled by the family, the number of errants, chevaliers, and squires controlled by the family, any soul given because soul given are considered property, and any connections within other organizations such as the Imperial College, the guilds, or even the criminal cartels of the Triad. These are your holdings. Kinds of house. Coined from the people of Asgir, the term kind refers to the blood or children of a house. There's various different kinds of family. The basic ones that we will generally talk about will include, and these can even be different for different cadet branches. We have three basic types. You have Magister family, and there's trying to find them here, but basically you have let's say this. Okay, there's basically there's a few different types. We're going to define three. You have Magister families, which are those who are focused generally on producing a strong sense of errance or genic abilities within their family. Then you have Mercantile families, and they're going to spend most of their time trying to breed, business or trade acumen, and these are often, crafter houses. There we go, that's the term, I couldn't see it. Then you have what we call soldier or warrior houses, which focus upon developing, naval defenses or understanding in politics specific to war and gaining power. Now, let's talk a little bit about education. Growing up as a member of the nobility often means private tutors and a life consisting of training. Heirs of the family will often receive the most rounded education, focusing upon managing the family holdings and understanding the current lord's ideas of rule. Secondary children will often be given a chance to decide where they wish to go, or in general will have an occupation of future selected for them. Many families often will assign their children to become the primary captain of the house guard, another dedicated to the local faith. Others will often be encouraged to take up land and found their own sub-houses to better take control of local minor fiefs. A family will see it as a means of, let's say a house lacks sub-houses or cadet branches, they will often go back, find lesser families that have no power, and what they may do is they may go down into a district lordship and say, look, your daughter or your son is going to marry my child, they are going to produce children, and we're taking your fief. That house will then get ejected, and yeah, that does happen quite a bit. It's also how new houses are formed, because that house may come back and kill, or we'll get into it eventually. Anyway, Inheritance is a bit more complicated. Oh, to quickly note, any genetic children are automatically identified and are sent to a local tech school or battle school once they reach the age of 4, or sometimes are personally trained from a master from a standing school, sometimes even a direct relative or a distant relative in general. Especially if the distant relative or direct relative is an Arashi, they will definitely bring that individual in because the Arashi will have a better sense of teaching the kid on how to be a good errant. Now, inheritance. The internal problems of houses often circle around the inheritance gained from previous generations. Feuds have sparked over splitting of land and struggle to be named heir. Historically, it was this reason that caused the splitting of House Perseus from House Athene centuries ago, and it was why the old Gan dynasty fell apart from internal struggles for power. Laws of inheritance differ from nation to nation, but in general, the rules are simple. Eldest inherits, or the one designated by the current House Lord. The arguments over inheritance thus often result from years of legal battles within the House Senate or within the various branches of the family itself. To note, the general rule of the three systems is this: eldest male in throne will always inherit. Eldest non-binary within Rook will inherit. Eldest female in Sentinel will inherit. This is just the attitude propagated by the sexism of the three systems. Now let's talk a little bit about power and rule and what this concept that we call Tarnos. The power of lordship of rule is to many nobles a right gifted to them by the divine, or the High King, or the star gods, or whatever your gods in this game are. However, no matter how decadent they become, the nobility understand that to rule properly they must obey the rules of Tarnos and the Great Covenant. In the tier, the houses are to manage the territories of the realm and bring prosperity and protection. Standing armies are awarded for defense and not to abuse the local population. Many ignore this ideal. Just going to make a note of that. The right to seize genics for trading is a purely defensive basis. It is more used as a means of control, and in all nobility are to be stewards of the realm and not tyrants seeking to carve up their lands like wanton warlords. They kind of ignore this too, to a degree. Not now, but in the past they have. Let's talk a little bit about Tarnos, just as a kind of an overview. Tarnos is this word in Elder Tongue. It is a bit like chivalry. It is the concept of rule. So, Tarnos is a series of tenets and beliefs core to the conduct of the nobility, a code of honor which dictates how a lord must rule, how a lady must speak, and a manner nobles present themselves. The very knowledge of the code of honor is required to pass the Tis Alchifraf, the scholar's test, an extensive series of questions and physical tests used if an individual is fit to rule. Basically, if you're going to be a noble who wants to rule, you need to pass this test, otherwise they go, nope, you're not going to become heir, not happening ever. Honor in this code is vague and often occurs into a complex sense of areas. It's derivatively vague, so it creates different interpretations. There's a few different tenets. There's actually 5, not 3, so this article needs to be edited like the other one, so we'll fix that after the podcast. Anyway, here are the tenets. Uphold the honor of one's house, which is very interesting. The basis of oaths and trust within Trine are based upon the complex notion of honor, the ability to trust another by their word. The very definition of honor is also very differentiated, and there are many different interpretations. For nobility, to be honorable is to abide by one's word and to do as the best of one's house, people, and their liege. Center the honor